Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of In the Know with Kat Bobineau. Today, my extra special guest is Seema Gururaj. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kat. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. And can you please tell us what you're doing as the founder and CEO of Circle?
Yeah, so I started Square Circle last October. We launched at the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, one of the largest conferences there. So we launched there. But really, what the company is about and what we're striving to do is provide women, specifically women technologists, a platform where they can grow their profile as technical experts and also be discovered by event curators, press, and media.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so, what got you excited about that, or what made you want to start your own business?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think for me, I have to put on three different hats that Seema wore. And that kind of all married together. And that's how this was born. So the first hat that I wore was that of being the director of the Grace Hopper celebration. And every year, one of the biggest things that I felt passionate about, and also it was quite a pain point, was I would spend 2 to 3 months trying to find these amazing women technologists to put up on stage, right?
Wow.
So we would see, oh, this person with this big title, that person with that big title, but the point was, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to be up there on stage? What is it that you've technically just shattered the world with? Let's talk about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a challenge trying to find this, but we did find them. And then the problem became nobody heard of them after that.
Oh, wow.
Like, did you know the director of DARPA was an amazing woman named Arti Prabhakar? No, right?
No.
And that was it. Like, boom, after that stage, when you look at these top XXX lists, right,
Mm-hmm.
of amazing visionaries, they were nowhere to be found. And that was the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the second hat I wore was that of being a woman technologist myself. That is my background. I was at IBM for 9 years. And so when I was in the corporate world, being a woman technologist, I often wondered who I was. What was my technical point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like, had I known that and had I had a little bit of maybe coaching or help, I would have been out there talking about the work that I did. So that was, you know, those were kind of the different forces that led me to say that I got to do something. I mean, in 2 years, if I still hear that visibility is a problem for women technologists,
Right.
and organizers and press and media are still asking, where do we find these people? It's going to be, I just don't want to hear that. That's why I started it.
Oh no, I completely understand. Like we have this big push for STEM. We have this big push for women in STEM.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of those that may not be in that part of STEM like technology.
Hmm.
Well, where are the women? And
Right.
you know they're there.
Right.
They're all out there. You just now you're giving them a platform,
Exactly.
which is amazing. And so how long has Square Circle been out?
So we've been out since last October. So we're a very young company. And in fact, in May, we're going to relaunch our platform with the new version that's scaled up. So, women can actually see the potential of the platform. And in August, we are moving to India as well.
Okay.
We're launching in India. There seems to be a huge cry and hunger for something like this there as well.
Okay. So moving to India, what do you expect is going to happen, or what are you trying to do when you're moving the company? And are you moving the company as a whole to India, or are you just going to start a whole new, like an India chapter and a Bay Area chapter?
So we're going to start small. As with any startup, I think we want to start with the pilot,
Mm-hmm.
and see which direction the audience kind of takes us in.
Okay.
And here's the thing: what I realized, Kat, in doing a lot of work in the space and seeing, talking to a lot of women, fundamentally, they all want the same thing. Fundamentally, it's the same problems regardless of where you are in the world. imposter syndrome that's on a level that I don't, I mean, it's scary, right?
Yes.
Or if you kind of have that confidence, then the question becomes, what are you going to talk about? So those kind of issues exist anywhere in the world. So that part is fine. But I think what we did realize is how you approach the India market is going to be slightly different. Here, I've made it a very democratic process. Anybody can join, right? You don't need anyone's permission from your company or somebody to tell you that you can join or you deserve the visibility.
Right.
Anybody can join. And in India, we might have to pilot a slightly different model given the cultural issues there.
Okay. And so, what made you choose India as the market that you want to relaunch this?
Yeah, I think I didn't intend to. I should be very honest here. I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out US, but um, so I am Indian. That's my roots. So I went on a trip to India this past December,
Okay.
and it was supposed to be a vacation, and I said, the workaholic in me couldn't stop.
Oh
So
my
I said,
goodness.
let me just figure out if there's a market for something like this there. And I was there in just a week. And in the week that I was there, I started getting people approach me and say, do you want funding? When are you starting? Is it already
Oh.
there? Can I go sign up?
Oh wow.
So
That's amazing.
it was crazy, and I didn't even try much. So then, of course, I reflected. It's one thing to say, "Yay, we're interested,"
Right.
and one thing to actually do market research and figure out if there's really a market and go there. So that's the phase we're in to figure out, can we go from yay to okay, is this a viable business there?
Right. And so, do you think that having this platform for women in technology is needed, not just in America and India, but maybe around the globe? That there has to be a way for women in technology to showcase themselves and be proud of themselves and talk about what they're doing.
Yeah, I think, Kat, you got to the heart of it. Somewhere down the line, something has happened where there's an opportunity elitism that's going on here, right? That's shutting off voices and perspectives that need to be heard. What happened? I mean, I always tell people, here's a fun exercise. We can try it right now on our cell phones. But if you go Google magazine covers just for 2016, I'm not even asking you to go back in time or whatever, Wired, Fortune, any of that, and you go look at the images there. It's crazy. What happened? Like, why are we missing from the tech conversations? Why are we missing from talking about the future of technology? And you're absolutely right. Who said the future of technology is happening here? It could be happening in Atlanta. It could be happening in South Africa. It could be happening in India. We don't know that. And so I feel like this platform is a right way to bring technology to the forefront and to kind of bridge that gap that's happening with the opportunities that are currently either going to the same people, or even with the women, it's become an echo chamber. You hear the same women once they put themselves out there, right?
Right. And I feel like that is the same throughout STEM.
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
So
Absolutely.
my background is science.
Yeah.
And if you looking at media perspective, until the movie Hidden Figures came out, you didn't
Correct.
see women in science.
Yes.
Like, and those women were still more computer science, technology, and then actual physical science.
Right.
And I definitely see a lack of support and a lack of imagery of women in science, technology, engineering, and math.
Correct.
So your platform, do you know of a platform that's doing that for the rest of STEM, for science, engineering, math, or is that needed too?
That is needed too. I don't know of any. So there are speaker bureaus, right? And I'm not a speakers bureau. I tell people that upfront, and I'm not a famous job connecting platform. um, and the reason why I'm not a speakers bureau is I don't expect somebody who knows who they are, like they know who they are, and connect them only to speaking opportunities, right? I tell women, you need to feel comfortable regardless of where you're at in this visibility spectrum. like I don't even want to be visible, from that woman all the way to I know who I am, I deserve a bigger stage, right?
Right.
So that's who I cater to. And through coaching and various other services that I offer, we're able to kind of get them those opportunities and stages.
Okay.
Now, for STEM, it's needed, right? It's very needed. And fundamentally, if you think about it, I'm a platform. I can serve anyone in any kind of area, right? Um, as I grow, what I'd like ideally to happen is my opportunity bucket fills up with opportunities for women in STEM as well.
Okay.
Um, because right now, my strength is technology, being in the Silicon Valley, and the opportunities I'm getting, be it podcasts, be it press, media, speaking, kind of is in that direction. I'm able to help and serve them better.
Okay.
But yes, absolutely, there's no reason why this platform cannot help other women as well.
Okay. And the platform that you've created, especially for the women in tech, where are they speaking at? Where can we see these women do their presentations, learn more about them? So where are they at?
Yeah, so here's the thing. For every opportunity, the number of people fighting for it is very intense,
Okay.
right? And especially if they're the high visibility, high stage, high kind of, high visibility opportunities. If I flip hats and go back to my conference organizer and that perspective, they're looking for someone who can fill up the seats.
Right.
So, what do I need to do with my women to make them stand out and for organizers to take a chance on them, right? So, that discovery process has to change a little bit for the women. And the biggest thing that will help them is if they have videos of them talking.
Okay.
Right? So if I could see Kat standing up on the stage addressing someone, I can take a chance on you like that.
Okay.
In the absence of that, they will go with Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, right.
So
I'm
that's
sure.
my challenge.
Right.
So I am fighting a lot for my women to get opportunities. I'm looking at podcasts. I'm looking at, I've got them a magazine, writing technical articles,
Okay.
and they pay for that. So I've been giving them, but that's a process that will take time to develop them. I want them to be on TED Talk stages. I want them to be on the cover of Fortune magazine, and I'm going to get them there, but it'll take time.
Okay. And so with you moving your company to India, are you going to focus mostly on the India market first and then come back to the US and do the Fortune 500 or Fortune 500 and the Fortune magazine and the podcast, or are you try and do both simultaneously?
Yeah, so it's going to be both simultaneously, and I have a team in India.
Okay.
So I create the vision and the strategy, but I have a team in India to help there. So definitely my time is not going to be shortchanged either way. It'll be 200% in both countries. Is that even possible? But
That's a big,
passion takes you a long
yes,
way,
it
right?
will. And like we said, that's just the beginning, doing
Yeah.
a US market, doing an India market, then you can possibly take that to a Japan market,
Yeah.
a China market, an Africa market, which is an amazing
Which is
thing.
amazing.
Yeah. And so let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about what got you into technology in the first place.
That's a great question. I've been reflecting on how I want to answer that. But here's the thing, Kat. So I grew up in India, right? So for me, I have visually seen the difference between the haves and the have-nots, socioeconomically, right? Every day. I knew my parents would always tell me, if you didn't study, you would be the help in the house, right? And if you studied, you would have a very comfortable living. So for us, education and studying was not on the table, right? You had to study. And with technology, my first, so we were fortunate enough to have these PCs, old time PCs. And I used to play Prince of Persia. I know I'm dating myself here. But I
That's okay.
aced all the levels, right? I was that good. So I thought that, you know what, I got this thing. I know how to manipulate this thing called a computer. I got it. And in 10th grade, I actually took a course. And I believe they taught us BASIC at that time. So it was a very specific programming language course. And I failed it.
Oh,
I
okay.
did very, very badly in it. Um, Now, as an adult, I can tell you why. For me, nobody connected the practical aspect of what I'm learning in class to reality. I didn't know why I was studying the for loops, the if loops. What did it I mean, what was the point of that, right? Had I made that connection to something in real life, I think I would have got it. But I didn't. I studied it as if it were something that needed, you know, rote by rote almost, right? I didn't get it. The irony of it after that was undergrad, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
I'm a very visual person, so I was like, yes, that's my life. That's what I'm going to
You're gonna
do.
build buildings, make them
Build
beautiful.
buildings. I know I could build this glass building with a bridge. That was me, right? But I remember my father sat me down. And I had this option of getting into architecture, getting into computer science, and my father was kind of in that space. He was a structural engineer, so he knew that, and he told me, he said, you know what, it's going to be hard for you starting your own business, establishing yourself as an architect in an ocean of people. Computer science is budding, it's happening. I think you should go for it, learn it. Um, and I listened to my dad.
Well,
And
he
I
was
did
right.
it. I did it. And I think eventually, and I came here and did my grad school, and somewhere it clicked. And I also realized my pathway in computer science was still visual. So I gravitated towards UX. I gravitated towards that space, human computer interaction. And I found my home in computer science.
Okay. That's a great story. And I think sometimes parents in the U.S., and I'm going to say this, and people might get upset, is they're not involved a lot of times in what their kids are doing, and they're not involved in saying maybe you should try this or this, and this is a budding program that you should do. Maybe not do architect, but it sounds like, and sometimes it works.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the student will go and do what their parent says, and they'll love it. And sometimes a student will go and do what their parent says and hate it.
Correct. Yeah.
And so it seems like your path was, you were on computers, but it turned out to be something that you really love,
Yeah.
which is good. And going from undergrad to grad to here, what did you do at IBM? Like, how did you get into IBM, and what was your job title there?
Yeah. So IBM, I got into storage management software. That was what I was working on. The first few years, I was doing quality assurance, and that was kind of the best way to learn, because you're pretty much tearing the product apart, and you got to think like a customer, not like, like a person who's actually written the code, right?
Right.
So that was great. And then I realized that I was testing stuff so repeatedly, and there was an easier way to not have those mistakes even happen if I had a UI, right? Because if I had a front end and I put that there, I could force people not to make those dumb mistakes that I was testing, spending hours testing.
Right.
So I prototyped that, and I showed my team there, and it eventually made it into the product. It was very raw, ugly, but it made it into the product, and that was where my love for UI started. And IBM was amazing that way, the way they nurtured my interest and my career.
Okay.
I got to lead 3 products right after that. I got to be the UI lead on those 3 products. And I continued my journey there. And eventually, that was the time when I think people realize that while we spend 18 hours or so on a product, right? So
Right.
we know the ins and outs. And we were like, oh, if you put this variable, that variable, then the product is going to perform optimally. We knew that.
Right.
And then there was that phase where, the design thinking started coming about. And then, you were tuned to the fact that that's not how your customers even think. They probably don't even bring up your product most of the time. And that's when my shifting and my fascination and kind of pathway changed to working on HCI. And I led the version 1 of a small and medium business product there, and I led the UI team.
Okay. And so going from IBM and doing this platform, before even doing the platform, you worked at the center. Did you work there first before taking, or not taking over, but creating your own, right? Is that how,
Yeah.
or was that the transition, or am I missing any pieces?
No, no, no. You kind of. So IBM was going great. I was on a pretty good trajectory there, but life happened to me, Kat.
Oh,
I had a personal family situation,
okay.
and because of which I chose to resign from IBM. So it was all of a sudden going from 18-hour working days to being at home with my baby. She was sick. But that was when my journey as a social entrepreneur began. So this was 2008. I, just wanted to meet like-minded individuals. We went to this sort of a meetup-y thing. Meetup wasn't even a platform then. But that's when I started my first Women in Tech group. It,
Okay.
it was in 2008, and within 3 years, we had 900 women.
Wow.
So I
And that's just
knew
out here?
that was in the Bay Area,
Oh,
and I
wow.
knew I was on to something. I couldn't quite figure out what. Although we started it very specifically focusing on ethnicity, it was for Asian women.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the end of it, we had everyone, because what bonded us was our love for technology.
Right.
And I realized technology was meant to be a unifier. I don't know
Right.
what happened along the way, right? Um, then I was also invited to be part of a think tank that focused on urbanization issues in India.
Okay.
So that was a transition. It's like, how did this engineer from IBM get to sit in a room with politicians from India?
Right. Then.
And she's talking about how to fix India now. What happened there? Um, but no, I mean, I think for me, that was really a pivotal moment. Like, I had two major aha moments there. One was, I was seeing myself as a software engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was putting myself in that box. Whereas those people sitting in the room had no idea what I'd studied, where I'd gone to school. All they knew was in the room what I brought to the table. And they saw me as this creative, strategic person who gets things done, who's passionate about it, and who knows what she's talking about, right?
Right.
And that's what they respected. So that was my aha moment. Why am I boxing myself based on my title that somebody gave me? I'm more than my title.
Right.
Um, and the second aha moment I witnessed, and that's carried on in my life, is when like-minded people come together, and they converge along a common goal, magic happens.
Mm.
Magic. We got so much done.
Oh, wow.
And we really kind of impacted India. And then, yes, after that, I joined the Anita Borg Institute,
Mm-hmm.
where I was the director of Grace Hopper for four years.
Oh, wow.
And then I went into the corporate world, because I wanted to see what it took to actually create gender equity in an organization. I had the vantage point at Anita Borg Institute. I saw how all companies and what they did, but it's like, okay, what happens within companies? Why aren't we able to be equitable there? So
And
that was my challenge.
what did you find when you looked at that?
Um, it's hard. I have a lot of learnings from that. And I think one thing that I realized is expecting one or two people within organizations to be able to change behaviors
Yes.
for thousands of people is not really set up.
Yeah.
to succeed. It's hard. It's very hard to do that. And and also, the other thing I realized was, the best way to create change is to focus on something very specific, and I chose to then influence that from the outside, which is why I started the company.
Okay. And you started the company in October.
Yeah.
And so it's really been about 6 or so months
Six.
since you started it.
Right.
Have you noticed anything in those 6 months that since you started the company, or is there a lot of women coming to you for this platform? Like, what are you noticing with it?
That's a great question. User acquisition hasn't been too hard. Um, However, having said that, I'm going to completely contradict myself. What I find with a lot of women is, if I sit and talk to them like this, if I tell them what the platform is about, if I tell them visibility is not a bad word,
Yes.
there is a way for you to find your authentic voice, and it does not have to be in front of a stage, in front of thousands of people, and then you feel like you've made it. If that's not you, that's okay. Your choice doesn't have to be zero, or that you're running at that 3,000 miles per hour in front of a big stage.
Right.
It could be blogs, it could be writing, it could be a quieter way to show your strength. And if I have the chance in a room to communicate that to women, they love it. They sign up immediately, and they get it, right? So I think that's a little high touch in terms of just communicating why they even need something like this. And I completely get it. They have like a full-time job, they have family, they have commitments.
Right.
And then they're like, Seema, okay, now you have one more thing to add on to my list. And no, it's like, I need their help to create this change. And I know they have a voice. And yes, it does take a little bit of commitment, but I think once they do that initial bit of hard work to figure out what it is, then they're all set.
Okay.
So I think that's the hard part.
And what is your zenith with this? What is that point that you really want to get to with your company?
I shouldn't have to exist.
Okay.
The day I don't exist is success.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world, right? Nobody should ever say, I don't know where to find amazing women, at least for now, women technologists, because we exist, and we have them there. So help me get out of business, I guess.
I love that answer too. I love it. It's like, I shouldn't have to exist.
Yeah.
It's so true on so many levels, because we hear a lot of things. It's 2017. There shouldn't be racism. There shouldn't be finding women in tech. There shouldn't be all of this. But there is.
There is.
There is this big gap that we are still trying to fill with women in STEM, and changing a perception and making sure people let us sit at the table, and that visibility
Correct.
is there for them.
Yeah.
So we have like 2 minutes left in that 30 minutes. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Right. Is there anything you want to talk about, or anything that you want to tell the audience in the last few minutes?
No, I think, just a couple of things. So at least now you're aware there's a place for you to go. There's a place where we can, nurture your voice. But I'd also encourage a lot of women, for some reason, for us, talking about things like work-life balance, negotiating, the soft skills, it comes easier. And it's not that we shouldn't talk about it. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But I think the more the people see you as technical role models, that's how we're going to change status quo, right? You need to be on stages talking hardcore tech. You need to be right next to the Elon Musk and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, telling people what the future of tech is going to look like, right? We're completely missing from those conversations. And we show up only in these women in tech lists. What does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? You're a visionary in a women in tech list, or you made it to the top tech list. And there is definitely a place for these women in tech events, right? There's definitely a place, but we got to integrate back into reality, women in tech, I mean, if you even think about it statistically, right? So let's say US, I'm just being very generous here, has 65% men technologists and say 25% are women, right? So if you're in the women in tech bubble, if you will, you're talking to only 25% of the population, and even less if you're like, in a company, let's say a company has a women in tech event and 20 people show up. Imagine you're like 0.001% of people know what you stand for, what your point of view is. There's still so many who don't. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to be the one to help you get there. It's not about fame, it's about getting your passion for technology out there so the world can hear you.
That is, that's amazing. I mean, I'm not in tech, but I'm like, woo woo. You know?
There we go.
I want to see this happen. I'm so thankful for you coming and being on the show and telling your story today. And I hope that this helps not just women but men in tech to see that there's women there, that they're doing this stuff, and that they're able to sit at the table, they're able to share their ideas, and some of those ideas might surprise you. They might take what we think we're doing in tech now to a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
So thank you again for coming. Thank you to my audience for paying attention and watching this week's episode with In the Know, Kat Bobineau. As always, if you have any questions or if you would like to speak to Seema, you can always send them to me and I will forward them her way. And until next week.